The sun was setting over the red sands of planet Threxia 9. Heat waves danced in the air. A human soldier named Jake Carter stepped out of a dusty shuttle and dragged his heavy bag toward a small building made of stone and metal. He had just finished a long mission and needed a place to stay. He checked the address on his holopad. Unit 17 Desert Flats. "Yep, this is the place," he muttered. Jake knocked on the metal door. It creaked open slowly. A tall alien woman with golden eyes and silver blue scales looked down at him. Her body was long and snake-like, wrapped in a robe made from desert leaves. She had 2 arms and a wide tail instead of legs. "You are the human?" she asked in a cold voice. "Yeah, Jake. I booked a room for a month," he replied, offering a smile. The alien woman didn't smile back. "I am Jara. I own this building. You stay quiet, no trouble, and no smells. Humans always smell strange." Jake raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Got it." She moved aside to let him in. The inside was cooler than outside, thanks to the sand-powered cooling stones in the walls. The room was simple but clean. A bed, a table, a small food station, and a strange tube-like bathroom. Your unit. No guests, no mating. No food from Earth, and never leave water dripping. Understood? She said. "Yes, ma'am," Jake said with a small salute. Jara hissed and left. Slamming the door behind her. Jake dropped his bag and sighed. "Aliens," he muttered, shaking his head. The next morning, Jake woke up early. He walked to the bathroom, took a quick shower, and dried himself with the rough alien towel. As he stepped out of the bathroom with just the towel around his waist, the door suddenly burst open. "Hey, human!" A loud voice shrieked. Jake turned and froze. Jara stood at the door, her eyes wide with shock. Her tongue flicked in and out in panic. Her eyes were not looking at his face. They were fixed below his waist. She pointed a shaking finger. "What is that?" Jake blinked. "What is what?" She screamed. "Why do you have a mini shy hula between your legs?" Jake stared at her, confused. "Oh, what?" Jara covered her eyes with one hand, still pointing with the other. Asterisk, asterisk. That thing, is that normal for your species?" Jake looked down. "Oh, you mean that? That's just part of human biology. It's not a worm, if that's what you think." Jara hissed. "Not a worm? It looks like a baby sand god." Jake almost laughed but held it in. "I promise, it's not dangerous." But she didn't calm down. Instead, she backed away slowly, her tail thumping the ground in fear. "Goo. You keep it inside you most of the time?" she asked. Jake scratched his head. "It's always there, just covered by clothes." Jara's eyes narrowed. "So, you brought a sacred creature into my house without telling me. Do you know what that means on Threxia? That's illegal worship without a license." Jake took a step forward. No, you don't understand. It's not a sacred creature. It's part of me." Her eyes widened again. "It's attached? That poor thing is fused to you. You sick human monster." She turned and slithered away quickly, shouting, "I'm calling the officials. You may be hiding a living desert god in your pants." Jake panicked. "No, wait. Please don't call anyone." But it was too late. She was gone. Jake stood there, still dripping from the shower, unsure what just happened. 20 minutes later, Jake heard a loud knock. Bang! 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 He opened the door, and there stood 2 large aliens in armor. One held a scanner. The other held a glowing staff. "Are you the human with the mini shy hulud?" the armored guard asked. Jake blinked. "I think so. We need to inspect it." Jake wanted to scream. As the guard stepped forward, one says, "If that's truly what we think it is, the queen herself will want to see it." Jake stood in the center of the room, still half wet from the shower, wearing only a towel that was now slipping dangerously low. Across from him stood two giant aliens, one tall and slim with eyes like boiling oil, the other short and round, with a face like melted clay. Both wore shiny armor and held glowing alien tools. Behind them, the landlady Jara stood with her arms crossed and her tail flicking with judgment. The taller alien stepped forward, his nose wrinkling. State your species and your purpose for hiding a sacred creature inside your body. Jake blinked. Wait, what? I'm not hiding anything. I told your landlady already, it's not a worm. It's part of me. The short guard pulled out a glowing rod and waved it toward Jake's waist. Beep, beep, beep. Everyone gasped. It's alive. The short one shouted. Jara gasped in horror. I told you. A living Shai-Hulud child is attached to the human. Jake threw his hands up. Okay, stop. It's not a Shai-Hulud. That's just how male humans are built. The tall guard tilted his head. Built? As in, manufactured? Jake sighed deeply. No, it's biological, flesh, skin, muscle, nerves. Part of my reproductive system. The alien stared at him blankly. Jake took a deep breath. Look, in human males, this thing. It's called a penis. Dead silence. The guards looked at each other, then at Shara, then back at Jake. Shara's tongue flicked nervously. Your species attaches their eggs to the outside of their body? Jake groaned. No eggs. Not like that. We don't lay eggs. The short one gasped again. They grow worms. Jake facepalmed. 10 minutes later, Jake sat in a glowing examination chair inside a mobile alien lab van, wearing a tight silver sheet over his body, while 5 aliens surrounded him with scanners, sniffers, and notepads. A female alien in a long white robe walked in. Her skin glowed faintly, and she looked like someone important. I am Healer Master 3 Tella, she said. Explain your worm. Jake groaned. It's not a worm, it's just human equipment. Private equipment. 3 Tella leaned closer. Does it spit venom? Does it sing? Does it burrow underground when angry? Jake shook his head. No, no. And what? Definitely not. She straightened up. We have scanned it. It has blood flow, tissue, and flexible cartilage. It responds to emotional stimuli. This is not normal. Jake blushed. Yeah, that's biology. That's just how humans are. Trust me, every guy on Earth has one. Jara peeked from the doorway. Even their young males? Yes. Jake shouted. The room went silent again. After more scans and a few very awkward pokes, the examination finally ended. The healer spoke in a serious voice. You may go, but only under one condition. Jake raised an eyebrow. What condition? She turned to Jara. You, landlady, will watch over the human. Monitor the worm, study its behavior, report changes, and do not let it escape. Jake choked. Escape. It's not going anywhere. But Jara nodded seriously. Understood. Back in his room, Jake slumped onto the bed. Exhausted and humiliated, Jara entered quietly, carrying a notebook and a pair of alien gloves. Jake eyed her. Please tell me you're not about to poke it again. She looked up. No poking. Just observing. I've never seen a creature with such bold confidence in that area. Jake groaned again and covered his face with a pillow. Jara pulled up a chair. Now, tell me, human, what else does this penis do? As Jake tries to hide under his blanket, Jara quietly whispers, If it grows angry, do I need to feed it? Jake lets out a quiet scream. Jake had only been on Threxia 9 for 2 days, and already he wished he'd just slept in his shuttle. He sat on the corner of his bed, still in shock, while his alien landlady Jara stared at him like he was a dangerous science project. She held a glowing notepad, tail swaying, scribbling things with her long claws. Subject's worm remains quiet today, she mumbled. Jake groaned. Can you stop calling it that? Jura blinked. Then what do you call it when it stretches, twitches, and changes size with emotion? Jake buried his face in his hands. I want to go home. Before he could stand, the door slammed open with a loud thud. Two new aliens walked in tall, armored, with crests on their heads. These weren't local guards. These were officials. The taller one spoke in a deep, metallic voice. Human, you are hereby summoned by the Bureau of Unnatural Species and Forbidden Anatomy. Jake blinked. The what? Jura gasped and stood. You called them? That's a government branch. They handle alien monsters and forbidden creatures. The second official looked at Jura. According to your report, the human is carrying a living sacred beast in his groin. Jake stood up quickly. It's not a beast. It's me. It's a body part. Do I need to make a PowerPoint for this or what? The first officer stepped forward, holding strange shackles. Silence. You are to be taken for full inspection. If the specimen proves dangerous, it will be ... removed. Jake's face went pale. Wait, removed? Nope, not happening. Minutes later, he was sitting in the back of a floating transport pod, arms crossed, eyes wide with terror. The two officers sat across from him, unmoved. Jura had joined them as an official witness. Holding her notebook tightly, she leaned toward Jake and whispered, Don't worry. If they do remove it, I'll take care of it. Jake turned slowly to look at her. You want custody of my ... No. Just no. They arrived at a strange facility with dark walls and glowing signs. The front read, Center for Biological Threats and Unusual Reproductive Phenomena. Jake nearly fainted. Inside, he was led into a glowing, circular room with glass walls. Aliens of every shape and size stood behind the glass, watching him like he was an exotic zoo animal. An alien scientist floated into the room, literally floated on a hover chair, with 10 mechanical arms clicking. Subject number 339B, part mammal, part worm host, it announced. Prepare the examination table. Jake backed away. Nope, no exam tables. I'm not letting anyone touch anything below the belt ever again. The scientist pressed a button. A chair with leg holders rose from the floor. Your anatomy is classified under potential crossbreeding threat level 2. We must observe functionality. Jake's mouth dropped open. What does that even mean? This isn't a breeding farm. The floating scientist narrowed its eyes. Yet you carry a breeding device externally. Such a thing should not be possible. Jura stepped forward. It even moves on its own. Sometimes, like it has thoughts, Jake groaned. I swear I hate this planet. The scientist held up a scanner. It beeped loudly. Activity detected. The worm responds to emotional stimulus. Recommend immediate simulation. Jake jumped to his feet. Simulation? Oh no. Oh, absolutely not. But before anyone could move, a loud siren rang out through the building. WEEOOO-WEEOOO. Warning. Biological energy surge detected in chamber 3. Everyone paused. A new voice crackled over the speaker. It's coming from the human. Jake froze. The lights dimmed. The floor trembled. The floating scientist whispered, It's happening. The Shehulad inside him is awakening. Jake screamed. Nitrogen monoxide, it's not. It's just cold in here. Jake sat on a soft alien couch, wrapped in a silver blanket, sipping something that tasted like burned jelly and mint leaves. He was back in his rented room. Barely after what happened at the inspection center, where his body almost caused a planet-wide false alarm. The officials finally released him under one condition. He must be observed closely by someone who can report changes in the worm's behavior. That someone turned out to be none other than Jura, his alien landlady, now promoted to Watcher Class Observer. She took the job very seriously. At exactly 0600, Jake woke. up to find her sitting at the foot of his bed, just watching, her eyes locked onto the blanket that covered his lower body. She was scribbling in her notebook with intense focus. Jake stared at her. "Do you sleep?" Gerard blinked. "No need. I enter cold blood rest once every 3 days, much more efficient than human sleep. You, however, make strange noises." Jake sat up. "Snoring?" She nodded. "Also the word mama and something about hot sauce." Jake groaned and grabbed his shirt. Gerard leaned forward. "Did the worm grow last night?" Jake froze. "Please. Stop calling it the worm. It's not a wild animal. It's just my ... You know what." Gerard tilted her head. "No, I do not know what. That is why I observe." Later that day, Jake sat at the kitchen table, trying to eat a sandwich made from human rations. Gerard was across from him, watching him closely. Again, he finally snapped. "Do you have to stare at me all the time?" She nodded seriously. "Yes, especially when your emotions change. That's when the creature activates." Jake put down his sandwich. "It's not a creature, and it's not activating. It's just a body response." Gerard tapped her pen. "So it responds when you are happy?" Jake sighed. "Sometimes. And when you are frightened?" Jake paused. "Never. I hope not. What about when you see a beautiful mate?" Jake choked on his sandwich. Gerard's eyes narrowed. "Is that happening now?" Jake's face turned red. "No, I was just chewing." Later that evening, they sat quietly watching the human movie Jake had stored on his pad. It was a romantic comedy. The characters kissed. Gerard stared, eyes wide. "So this is what activates your worm?" Jake nearly dropped the pad. "No, well, I mean, not always." Gerard paused the movie, then explained how human bonding works. "Clearly, this device is part of the process." Jake leaned back, unsure how to even begin. "Okay, humans bond with feelings first, emotions, then sometimes touch. And yes, sometimes that part of the body gets involved too. But it's not the main thing." Gerard scribbled in her notes. "So humans are not ruled by the worm?" Jake shook his head. "Not most of us." She stared at him for a moment, then softly asked, "Do you think I am mate quality?" Jake blinked. "What?" Gerard turned away quickly, pretending to read her notes. "For science. Just for science. No emotions." Jake smiled, then laughed softly. "You're actually not bad for a terrifying, scaly alien who keeps talking about my private parts." She looked back at him, then smiled for the first time. That night, Jake lay in bed. Gerard sat quietly in a chair nearby, not writing, not watching, just sitting. "You're not taking notes?" Jake asked. Gerard replied gently, "No, the worm is calm. You are calm. I am not confused anymore." Jake smiled in the dark. "That's good." A pause, then she whispered, "But if it does grow again, do I need to sing to it?" Jake threw a pillow at her. Outside the building, a black alien shuttle waited in the dark. Inside it, a voice whispered, "The humans. Mating organ might hold the key to our future. We must take him." Quietly. The next morning began with silence. No birds, no sand lizards, no wind through the broken vents, just stillness. Like the desert was holding its breath. Jake sat at the small table, drinking lukewarm alien coffee. Across from him, Gerard stirred her strange blue soup, but she hadn't taken a single sip. Her eyes kept glancing toward the window. Something was wrong. "Hey," Jake said. "You all right?" Gerard didn't answer. She slowly stood up, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain with one claw. Her tail dropped flat to the floor. Outside, a golden hover chariot had landed in the street. It was covered in banners and symbols, guarded by 6 armored warriors wearing purple robes. And standing at the front, tall, elegant, and glowing faintly, was a woman like no other, the Queen of Threxia, Jira hissed quietly. It's her. She came in person. Jake stood up. Who? That your mom or something? Jira spun to him. No, that is Queen Nereva, ruler of the desert tribes. She hasn't stepped outside her palace in 7 years. If she's here, it's because of you. Jake froze. Oh no. Is this about the worm again? Jira gave him a look. Yes, it is always about the worm. Moments later, a knock came. But not like normal knocks. This one sounded like a gong. Hitting stone deep, echoing, royal. Jira opened the door slowly. The queen's voice rang out, loud and smooth. I have come for the human. The one who carries the living flesh worm. Jake poked his head out from behind the door. Okay, seriously. Can we please stop calling it that? But the queen stepped forward, staring at him with glowing golden eyes. Human male, she said, you will come with me. Your presence is required at the palace. There is a matter of survival. Jake blinked. Wait, did you just say survival? Jira stepped in front of him. He's not going anywhere. He's under my observation. The queen's warriors. Step forward. Then you will both come. The queen has questions, and you, she pointed at Jake, may hold the answer. Asterisk. The palace of Threxia was a glowing tower carved into the bones of a dead sand beast. Inside, glowing crystals lit the walls, and sand fell like waterfalls between glass floors. Jake and Jira were led into the throne of breath, a circular chamber filled with sweet, spicy air and glowing golden cushions. The queen sat high above them, looking down. You are a strange creature, human, she said. Many aliens have visited our planet. None carried a creature attached to their hips that grows, shrinks, and reacts with emotion. Jake crossed his arms. It's not a creature, it's part of me. I feel like I've said this 100 times. The queen nodded slowly. Yes, and that is what makes you unique. She clapped her hands. A curtain opened, and behind it stood 12 alien females, tall, proud, dressed in silk. Each of them looked sad, empty. These are my heirs, born without passion, without emotion, without fire. We cannot continue our bloodline. The desert gods have cursed our wombs. Jake felt his face getting hot. Where is this going? The queen stood. Our seers believe your device may contain a rare energy, something ancient, something powerful, a Shai-Hulud's breath trapped in flesh. Jake's eyes widened. Excuse me? Are you saying you must join the ancient ritual? The queen interrupted. Let the temple test you. If you are chosen by the sands, you will breed for royalty. Jake nearly passed out. Jira stepped in quickly. He is not a prize to be used. The queen frowned. Then we will take him by royal right. His species has no embassy here. He belongs to no house. He is claimable. Jake whispered. Did I just get turned into alien royalty breeding stock? Jira growled. That night, inside the guest chamber, Jake sat on the floor, head in his hands. How is this my life? He muttered. Zhara sat beside him. I won't let them force you. If we must run, we will run. Jake looked at her. You'd do that for me? She nodded. You are strange, awkward, loud, but you treated me like more than a lizard with a notebook. So yes, I would. They sat in silence until the door creaked open. One of the royal daughters stepped inside, her eyes glowing. Human. I was sent to begin the first test. Are you ready? Jake stared at her, then looked at Jira, then whispered. Please, tell me this is just a written test. In the dark halls of the palace, another figure watched through a crystal mirror. A shadowy alien whispered, if the human passes the ritual, he may awaken something that should have stayed buried. Jake stood in the middle of the sacred temple chamber, wearing nothing but a strange alien robe that barely covered his knees. The robe was too thin, too breezy, and smelled like hot rocks and old fruit. "This is madness," he muttered. Beside him, Jura looked nervous for the first time. She wasn't wearing her usual sharp robe. Instead, she wore ceremonial gold lines painted on her face, witness marks. Her role today was not landlady, not friend, but guardian of the chosen worm-bearer. Jake whispered, "Please, just remind me again. What happens if I fail this ritual?" Jara stared at him. "They cut off your worm." Jake almost fainted. High Priestess entered, her long arms sweeping like silk across the sand-carved floor. Around them, a dozen aliens in red cloaks circled in silence, holding glowing staffs. In the center of the room, a large stone bowl filled with glowing sand pulsed like a heartbeat. The priestess raised her voice. "Begin the test of trust." Jake looked confused. Test of what now? A platform rose from the floor. On it were three objects: a glowing rock, a long stick, and a bowl of angry-looking bugs. "One item must touch the worm," the priestess announced. "One brings pleasure, one brings pain, one brings illusion. Choose blindly." Jake's face turned white. "I did not agree to this." The crowd chanted, "Touch the worm! Touch the worm! Touch the worm!" Jora stepped close and whispered, "They're testing your courage. You don't have to, unless you want to stay alive." Jake groaned. "Fine. But if anyone films this, I swear I'll sue the galaxy." He closed his eyes, reached forward, and grabbed the stick. He held his breath, then tapped the stick gently to his lower robe. Silence. Then a soft buzzing sound. Everyone leaned forward. The glowing sand began to rise. The priestess gasped. "It reacts to his presence. The worm is linked to the desert soul." The sand swirled into shapes, ancient symbols only elders understood. The glowing storm filled the room like a whispering spirit. Jake whispered to Jara, "Did I just pass?" Jara's eyes were wide. "You didn't just pass. You activated the temple." Suddenly, the floor beneath Jake opened, and he fell straight down. Wahhh. He landed in a soft pit filled with sand and warm fur. He looked up. Across the pit stood a towering figure horned, with sharp fangs and a massive tail. A deep voice spoke, "You dare awaken the legacy of the worm?" Jake sat up, coughing. "Can everyone stop saying worm like it's a magical sword or something?" This was the final test, the test of survival. The beast moved forward, growling. It wasn't real. It was a sand illusion, but one that could cause real pain if Jake failed to overcome his fear. The beast roared and lunged. Jake didn't fight. He closed his eyes, stood tall, and shouted, "It's not a worm. It's called a penis. And I'm not afraid of you." The chamber shook. Then silence. The illusion shattered like glass. And Jake stood alone, breathing hard, the glowing sand rising around him like stars. From above, the queen watched from a hidden balcony, whispering, "He has no shame, no fear, only truth. He is the chosen." Hours later, Jake was carried back into the palace on a gold platform. Looking completely confused, Jara ran up to him. "You did it." Jake blinked. "I passed?" "You passed everything. Even the emotional honesty test." Jake frowned. "That was a test? Me yelling about my junk?" She smiled. "Anthrexia, admitting your truth with pride is sacred. And you screamed it to the stars." He scratched his head. "I guess I did." Jara stepped closer. "Jake, you don't belong to them anymore." Jake tilted his head. "No?" She placed a clawed hand on his chest. "You belong to me." But deep beneath the palace, ancient sensors stirred. A sleeping machine blinked for the first time in thousands of years. Worm signal detected. Host identified. Fertility core activating. Jake woke up in silk. Not sheets, a floating cocoon of real alien silk, wrapped around him like a royal burrito. His bed hovered above the floor, glowing softly. Across the room, alien musicians played flutes made of bone, creating peaceful, dreamy sounds. He sat up dazed. I either died or got promoted to space prince. The door opened. Jara entered, wearing a flowing robe made of desert feathers. Her eyes sparkled, her scales shined, and she had a strange smile on her face, somewhere between proud and mischievous. "Good morning, Chosen One," she said. Jake blinked. "Did you just call me Chosen One? Are people actually calling me that now?" Jara nodded. "You passed the ritual of the worm. You're a living legend." Jake groaned. "Can we please change the name of that ritual? Please?" Later, Jake stood on a golden balcony. Below him, a massive alien crowd cheered his name. "Yak! Yau! Jake looked over at Jara. "They're chanting. Jaworm, aren't they?" She nodded proudly. "You inspired a whole generation," Jake chuckled. "You know, back home I was just a tired soldier. Now I'm worm royalty." Jara took his hand in hers. "You're more than that now. You gave us hope. Our queen has her heirs. Our planet has a future. And me," Jake raised an eyebrow. "What about you?" Jara leaned close. "I got to study the worm and the heart that carried it." Jake's face turned red. That was romantic and extremely weird at the same time. But just as things seemed perfect, the ground trembled. Boom. Boom. Palace guards ran to the windows. Drones flew into the sky. Sirens screamed, unregistered. Energy surged from beneath the palace. Jake and Jara ran to the edge of the balcony. From below, ancient stones began to rise, floating into the air. Glowing veins of light cracked through the palace floor. A giant metallic egg emerged, humming, pulsing. The queen appeared beside them, her voice shaking. "The old machines, we forgot them. The worm energy has awakened them." Jake looked at his own body. What exactly did I activate?" Suddenly, the egg opened, hissing steam and golden gas. From inside, a machine made of light and bone rose and spoke in 1,000 voices. "You have awakened the seed forge." Everyone fell silent. "The last human-shaped key has been inserted." Jake stepped back. "Did it just call me a key?" Jara grabbed his arm. "Jake, this was never just about your body. Your genetics, your presence. You are the missing code to Threxia's old systems." The machine continued. "Choose a mate. The bond shall save the planet." Jake looked around. Nervously, aliens stared. The queen nodded. The priestess bowed. And the 12 royal heirs began to walk toward him, each of them tall, glowing and terrifying in their own way. Jake leaned to Jara. "Do I have to choose one of them?" Jara looked away. "Tradition says yes." Jake paused, then said softly, "Screw tradition." He turned, took Jara's hand, and stepped forward. "I choose her." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Jara blinked. "You, what?" Jake smiled. "You've been with me since day one. You saw the worst parts. Took notes on me like I was some walking science project. And still, you stayed. You didn't want the worm, you wanted me." Tears welled in Jara's glowing eyes. "I did." They stepped into the machine's circle. The machine spoke one final time. "Bond accepted. Legacy restored. The worm has chosen," Jake laughed. "Okay, even at the end, can we please stop calling it?" Too late. The ground glowed. The sky lit up. And the ancient technology of Threxia powered on for the first time in 10,000 years. Epilogue, weeks later. Jake and Jara sat under the stars, watching tiny worm-shaped fireworks explode in the sky. Kids wore rubber worm hats. Vendors sold worm popsicles. Songs about Jake the Worm Master played everywhere. Jake leaned back inside. "You know, I was hoping for peace and quiet when I came here." Jara laid her head on his shoulder. "Instead, you got love, fame, and a planet-wide fertility festival named after your crotch. Jake smiled. Worth it.